Greetings, welcome back again. My name is Jace Hargis and thank you for coming back for the second module. This one is on what's called backward design. It's a model by Wiggins and McTighe at looking how you might redesign your course. There are three major components and I'll go through those very quickly. The first one that they indicate is called identifying desired results. These would be the student learning outcomes. The second one would be how they determine evidence. So there's the assessment portion. And the third and final one would be the lesson planning experience. So the entire culminating experience as you put it all together. So what really makes this effective is how we view ourselves as designers in the course experience. So the first thing we want to do before we even get to those three steps is think about globally. What are the big ideas? What are the concepts that we want taught for that day, that week, that particular session? So we need to be able to unpack those. So for instance, are they things like core concepts that we're going to pull out that we know about? Are these some sort of focusing themes that are going to allow students to focus themselves on? Ongoing current issues that we might think about? Insightful perspectives that we've had throughout our experiences? Illuminating problems, working for those divergent questions for those? Organizing a theory or a model? And finally, some underlying assumptions that they may not be able to discover themselves. These are some of those large things that really should help identify, not the names of the chapters, but some of these big ideas that we can work from. Realizing also that these big ideas have many layers, they should be fairly complicated, they should be something that typically is misunderstood or causes misconceptions. And definitely these things sometimes change meaning and importance. So now let's work for those three items, number 1, 2, and 3. These are the ways that you're going to basically design your course. The first one, again, to remind you, is identifying those desired results. We call these student learning outcomes. Historically, they may have been called objectives or goals, but a student learning outcome is distinctively different in that it has two major components. One would be the substance or the subject, and two would be the form. This is the actual action that the learner performs. Now, a good student learning outcome addresses all but knowledge, disposition, and skills, all three. It's active, it's higher level, and most importantly, and probably most difficult, is that it's measurable. One thing you want to keep in mind is to use some of those action terms. If you're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, you want to try to access the application, analysis, and synthesis level. And so you want to use some words like analyze, demonstrate, derive, plan, propose, synthesize, justify. These are some terms in your question stem that might get things moving along the right direction and have the students operating at some higher levels. Now the second step, remember, is the collecting of the evidence. So we want to determine some acceptable evidence here. What are the key complex performance tasks that these students need to be able to do in class and outside of class? What other evidence do you need to collect? Laboratories, external internships, anything at all that would help you assess their performance better. And which one of these would require possibly a rubric to help they understand the students more clearly what's expected of you, and then you ultimately to be able to assess them more accurately. Keeping in mind that these questions that you'll be asking and the questions that are essential for learning should be arguable, debatable. Questions should reoccur and definitely reoccur within their business. They definitely should raise more questions. These are those divergent questions that kind of roll one after the other. And they should provide some sort of organization for meaningful connectiveness throughout their learning. So the final step of Wiggins and McTighe, the planning learning experiences, you can see by this diagram that you have the students in the middle. You obviously have your student learning outcomes that you formulated at the top, your assessment and measurement, and then this final diagram where you have all three of them coming together. Multiple ways to assess and measure, multiple ways to instruct, laboratories, cooperative learning, inquiry-based learning, project-based learning, lots and lots of strategies that you can use for this instructional piece. Speaking of that instructional piece, the methods are really going to be quite varied. I have a list of 145 active learning techniques that I share with our faculty, and these include examples such as think, pair, share, 1-minute paper, muddiest point, 1-sentence summary, speed sharing, concept mapping. There's all types of these that some may work for you, some may not. With active learning, there are actually roles for the teacher and roles for the students. As teachers, we need to be able to bring in useful higher level questions. We need to also be able to keep the class very, very focused and productive. Thirdly, we need to be able to assess them in a formative way, in a real-time way. And finally, we need to be able to summarize those key outcomes so they leave each day understanding what was expected of them. Now, the students have some roles as well. The students mainly need to be frustrated. They need to struggle. They need to embrace this challenging concepts. They need to hunger for this disequilibrium that Piaget talks about, where they hit the wall and have to accommodate or assimilate. And finally, they have to make mistakes. They have to make many mistakes in a safe environment to where they productively fail or experience these failed events. Well, that summarizes the Wiggins and McTighe model very briefly. Before you go, if you can, please go ahead and summarize one sentence of what you learned. Secondarily, go ahead and jot down just one idea. Hopefully there's at least one that you can use in your class. And then finally, go ahead and jot down that one word, how you feel right now. Thank you once again for joining us on this module, and we look forward to seeing you at the next module.